I want to go to the Courier Mail, Ollie, and here's a story. I think it's already got close to 400 comments on the Courier Mail website in a few hours, which suggests that it's a story that has resonated already. And I think you'll find tomorrow it'll dominate the shock jocks, Hadley and co. On the radio. Premier shifts the goalposts. The Palaszczuk government has granted a special exemption to allow a plane load of NRL players' wives, girlfriends, kids and officials to jet into Brisbane and head straight to quarantine hotels. This is despite the Premier last Wednesday imposing a 2-week pause on hotel quarantine because the system was overwhelmed, meaning thousands of Queenslanders were stranded interstate. Now, under normal circumstances, Ollie, this would go straight through to the keeper because the announcement last week, the pause, wouldn't have happened and people would have said, all right, that's fair enough. But when you pause a hotel quarantine system and say we're not taking anyone into our hotel quarantine scenarios for 2 weeks, and then you allow 5 days later a plane load, a charter plane of NRL players' wives, girlfriends, kids and NRL officials, you are changing the goalposts considerably, and there are thousands of people who are right now very angry with the Palaszczuk government over this because they're stuck in either the ACT, Melbourne or Sydney, unable to come back to Queensland until at least September 9, one of whom is the former opposition leader in Queensland, a bloke called John Paul Langbroek, who went to Melbourne last week for his father's funeral. He's actually put out a statement tonight saying that Anastasia Palaszczuk has no idea of the impact that her decisions, or as she says, they're the Chief Health Officer, Jeanette Young's decisions, is having on people's lives. And the problem here, Ollie, is the lack of consistency. It's the lack of clarity. It's the inability to understand. If you make a decision, people go, all right, but then if you change that decision for certain people, like wags, like rock stars, like movie stars, like singers who are given special treatment, well, then you're inviting criticism.
Absolutely. Look, controversially, I think it's a great move that the players' wives and girlfriends and families will be in Queensland for the NRL Finals Series. And I'd say similarly here, Glee, so we're probably going to hold the AFL Grand Final in Perth, that the family members should be able to come here. But you've got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So the fact that we're still talking about this 18 months into the pandemic with this blanket rule at the moment, it is so arbitrary. And like you said, you hear last week from Anastasia Palaszczuk, sorry, our hotels are full, we're taking a pause for 2 weeks, and then you give special exemptions to the rugby league community. It does not pass the pub test, plain and simple. You should be able to do everything. Like people from New South Wales should be able to come to Western Australia at the moment, particularly if you've had 2 vaccinations. Why don't you come over here, get tested at the border, spend 2 or 3 days in hotel quarantine till you test negative, then go and do the rest of your quarantine back in a residence in a home for 14 days. We've got to look at ways and means and measures to be able to move forward here, Glee. So there are so many compassionate examples like you just expressed there for the former opposition leader who's trying to return home from a funeral. There are funerals obviously being held in Australia every single day that loved ones are missing out on because of these closed borders, and then they hear about rugby league players or officials getting given green cards to enter Western Australia or Queensland. I can understand why they're really cheesed off by this, but you can do both, Gleeso. You really can do both if the premiers just would show a little bit more compassion and humanity towards the fact that we are all Australians. We're not just Queenslanders or West Australians or New South Welshmen. Perhaps we are when we have state of origin on, but that's it, Gleeso. We're all Australians, and we forget that we have this horrible state versus state bickering arrangement at the moment, and it's just being driven by the power-hungry premiers who can sniff a political opportunity to dislodge Scott Morrison out of the Prime Ministership in Canberra and install their mate Anthony Albanese. And it just is really starting to grate because you can see through the politics of all of this.
You must have read my column yesterday, mate. That's exactly what I said. They're all rowing, they've all got their own teams. You got the red corner and the blue corner, and I can see Wayne Swan, the National President of the Labor Party, in cahoots with Albanese, in cahoots with McGowan and Palaszczuk, and of course Andrews, and they're just sitting back going, it's all ScoMo's fault. It's all ScoMo's fault. And unfortunately, a lot of people buy that